Please feed the YouTube algorithm by giving the video a like. If you want to see more like this, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of new videos. If you want to chip in on my expenses, I now have Patreon and YouTube memberships.
So, welcome. This is going to be, obviously with the weather, this was already planned to be a day of the full day of the conference. So we're just moving time slots around, and Michael is going to give us a presentation on the past and present of EV conversion. So he's got, when did you do your 914 originally?
2009.
2009, so back when we did ours, and then again this year, early this year completed it again. So it might be interesting just for him to talk to you about the trials and tribulations or things that happened right. One thing is we're going to keep this moving pretty fast, so if you have questions, if you could hold until the end, unless it's just the best question in the world to really enhance the talk, and comments and stuff, so we're just going to want to keep moving at as rapid of a pace as we can. But again, welcome to day 3. We don't even know anymore. And we'll play the weather by the ear.
Okay, welcome everyone. I got volunteered for this, so if I
Voluntold.
threw it together, it's more like a stream of consciousness. It's a little rough. So there's some pictures, there's some words, and then there should be a cool demo at the end, so hold on for that. So yeah, as Brian said, I made a Porsche 914 back in 2009. So I've been in the EV world for a staggeringly long time, which kind of scares me. I'm starting to feel old. I have a really weird pain right here. Anyone else? You may have seen my 914 videos on YouTube. I am Mike's Tropical Tech. I literally get tens of viewers on my videos. So, and it's good that we're all here, but this is kind of a preaching to the choir moment because we're all in it. We all like to play with tools and high voltage. But it's good to reflect and see where we were, where we are now, where we're looking to go to in the future, because we've had a really huge impact on this industry. And then hopefully a demo. Okay, so 2006, this movie called Who Killed the Electric Car came out. Who's seen this movie? Who saw it in the day when it first came out? Wow, wow, that's great. So I knew nothing about it, and it was playing at an art house cinema in Austin, and I had a free afternoon, so I went and saw it. And when I came outside at the end, there were some hand-built electric conversions, and I'm like looking at the thing going, what the hell is this? And I walked away, and I literally didn't know what they had done to their vehicles. But the thing I took away from the film was that what GM did. They built this car because the state of California forced them to. Then they got the state to change the law. Then they recalled all the cars and crushed them because they didn't want this car, they didn't want to support it, they didn't want to cut into their gas and diesel vehicles. But my other takeaway was this Elon guy. This scrappy little guy trying to fight, you know, the world's entrenched automakers. There hasn't been a successful car company for 100 years up to that point. And you know, his work ethic was mind-blowing to me. His dedication of the time and effort and blood and his own personal fortune he plowed into this company on the brink of bankruptcy while he was also trying to make a rocket company in another entrenched industry that was trying to destroy him. So I gambled and made a modest investment back in 2012 when the stock was $1.67. So thank you, Elon, for the last 12 years of my retirement and hopefully the rest of my life. So about me, worked for IBM for 22 years, software engineering, moved to California in 2007. I bought a house and instantly installed a 5 kilowatt solar power system that only cost me $45,000.
Ouch!
You just wanted it.
Yeah, but the cool thing was I ended up quitting IBM and I joined this solar company as their monitoring engineer. And on the basis of an app that I wrote, and when I'm talking with my solar sales guy, I said, oh, like I'm a software guy. I'm going to write an app that shows like how my system's performing. And he's like, okay, yeah. And so I did. Then I remembered, you know, I built a woodworking shop, but I was still itchy for a project. And then I remembered back to this movie I saw. So this is the solar power app that I wrote. This is a particularly weird cloudy day, but you know, I had data every 5 minutes. I had the weather forecast up here. I had historical trends and little graphic graphs about the power. And I sent this to him after it was done, and it went around that company like wildfire, and they called me up and said, we want to hire you to be our monitoring guy. So I said, okay. Then, when I started thinking about doing my own car, there was this cartoon came up, which is Opus, and who's the guy? Berkey Breathed, is that how you say his name? The Opus cartoon guy? And he had it particularly out for Dick here and the oil companies. So what I did is I customized it to myself. And I put a little Porsche logo here, and here's my 914 and my solar inverter and my solar.
It looks like a 914, yeah.
In a weird way.
You know, and so I had this stuck, you know, pinned to the wall of my office, and it got a lot of attention from everyone. So I bought a 1973 914 on eBay, and the description was, looks good from 10 feet. I now know that that's code for,
Rust bucket.
it's a rust bucket, absolute rust bucket. So I stripped it all down, gave it to a local body shop that a friend of mine had done his real Porsche 356 there. So like, okay, I can trust these guys. They had it for 6 months. They worked on it between insurance jobs. And there's some of the rust. This is what it looked like when I bought it. This is what it looked like after I ground it all down. And this was full of bathroom caulk. This whole hole. And I was having to like dig it out with a spoon. But then I'm like, I know nothing about electric cars, so how am I going to do this? And I tend to go to the experts when I get into a new field. And there was this company called Electro Auto, and they had a Rabbit and a 914 kit. And the founder's name is Mike Brown, so how can I go wrong?
Yeah.
It went badly wrong, because the 2008 market crash hit. They stopped sending me parts, they stopped responding to my emails, they wouldn't answer the phone. And I've got, you know, half a pile of electric car parts with nothing that I can do with it. So I ended up driving to their house, because I knew where they lived, with my pickup truck. I knocked on the door, I said, give me the rest of the parts now or I call the police. And they went, oh, okay. And then we threw everything in the back of my truck. This is their website. I had to go back to the Internet Archive because their website now says we're retired, go away, essentially. But so this was their Rabbit kit, the 914, and then some, I think I remember seeing this like custom car back in the day.
Don't call us babe, we'll call you.
Yeah. So it turned into what they call a resto mod, because I really modernized it. I de-chromed it, I painted it with a modern Porsche color called Meteor Metallic Gray, and it came with these 20 deep cycle marine lead acid batteries weighing roughly 1,000 pounds. But after it was done, it was a fun little car to drive around, and I enjoyed it, and I got out of it what I thought I was going to get out of it. Went to car shows, actually won one thing, and the category was called Special Projects. I don't know what that means, but I took it, and it was fun. So here's some pictures along the way. This is after I stripped it down. This is in the body shop. It looks like somebody shot it with a shotgun here. There was so many rusty holes. And then they're building it back up and painting it, and I took it home on my trailer. And then I also wrote an Android app to monitor the battery system using a piece of hardware called Pack Tracker. It was a primitive thing. All it did was read voltages, but it had the fatal flaw of powering itself from the first cell, which we know what that does to a pack. And then literally the day after I bought it, the guy went out of business. And I said, look, I'll make you a deal. I will buy all your intellectual property and I'll continue the company on. And he's like, it's not worth my time to train you on everything you need to know. So I instantly had an orphaned product. I actually put this up on Google App Store, my very first Android app. Then I discovered EVTV and this camel-smoking, whiskey-drinking curmudgeon and his trusty henchman. And he said, we can change the world, get 100,000 guys in a garage and do something. And at the time, the only car you could buy was a Nissan Leaf. And of course, an endless stream of press releases by the major car companies, but nobody was taking it seriously. And looking back, you know, Brian and Jack were way ahead of the curve because they knew what was coming. And that was my Sunday mornings. I'd sit on the couch and eat my cereal and watch Brian and Jack play with wrenches and do everything.
Melt them.
Yeah, melting wrenches. That was, what's the Irish guy? Damien Maguire.
Damien Maguire.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Spanner wrench meltdown.
Yeah. So, there's, what building was it that we
This
had?
was right here at the river campus in the atrium, right down the street.
Huge, beautiful
Yeah.
ballroom and everything, I still remember that, yeah. And then Chris Payne came into my life again, and we got to see the very first screening of Revenge of the Electric Car the day before it was released to the public. And he came here and he showed us his movie. Okay, and then I moved to Thailand. My wife passed away and I decided, okay, I'm giving up on civilization. I'm gonna go live in a little quiet beach town. And the thing is, in Thailand, you cannot import a used car. And that came about because all these rich Bangkokians, and that's really what they're called, Bangkokians, they would fly to London, they would buy a Bentley, drive it for 2 days, and put it on a ship and call it a used car and avoid a bunch of taxes. So the government finally said, okay, no more used cars. So it sat in this airplane hangar for 10 years. I sold the batteries because they were going to go bad anyway. While I was in Thailand, I bought this really crappy electric scooter from a company in Bangkok and customized it and had an Android tablet and all kinds of stuff. And then I bought this really great Chinese scooter from a company called Niu, N-I-U. It's magnificent. And then I also installed 2 solar modules on my balcony. So I keep dipping my finger in the technology. Then after 10 years, I decided I wanted to change, thought about where I wanted to live in the world, and I decided Barcelona was the new place for me. And in Spain, you're allowed to import a used car, and you're allowed to convert a gas car to electric. So I thought, okay, this is my chance to get the car back in my life. But to do that, you have to go through Spanish paperwork, which is a living nightmare. I actually hired a Brit who has a company that does nothing but import cars into Spain, mostly handling, UK residents. You have to have a certified engineer, an automotive engineer, certified by the government to review imported cars. He has to write a report on everything in your car and give his little stampy stamp that your car is worthy of being imported. Then you have to go through the ITV technical inspection. And this is what I hired this guy to take me through. So my plan was, I'm going to commit to this. But at the same time, I thought, all right, I'm not buying another set of lead acid batteries. I'm going to jump to lithium. And I thought of my buddies at EVTV. They've got a bunch of great battery modules sitting out here. So I shipped the car from California to here, lived here for 6 months, upgraded the battery pack, plus 1,000 other things. And I made a series of about 32 videos of every little step I made along the way. Also, again, with tens of views on those. But it makes me feel good. I'm hoping I'm like laying some seeds for other people to learn from. And these are some of the title pages, like battery modules, battery box, the charging. Actually had to install the Menicus Type 2 charging socket to be compatible with the chargers that I was going to be charging it to. And I used the EVTV V2 BMS battery controller. So hired the Brit, shipped it over, got it through the ITV, which I thought it would take 3 or 4 days. I was there for a month and a half, living in a rented apartment while I was, I would say, okay, on a Wednesday, all right, I'm ready, let's go for the inspection. And he's like, well, we're off, we can't get the tow truck guy, so we're gonna take it in for the inspection on Tuesday. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to the beach for 5 days.
And you wound up in a van down by the river.
Very, very close. Okay, now the ITV process, I spent so much time and effort trying to make the motor and the battery pack and the high voltage cabling like flawless, so they would have nothing to complain about. And you know why they didn't complain? Because they didn't care. And they didn't care because it wasn't on their checklist.
Yeah.
And if it's not on the checklist, they don't care. It could have had a missile launcher hanging off the back of the car. And they'd be like, oh, nice missile launcher.
Yeah.
But what they focused on was every car in Spain has to have a red light mounted on the rear left side of the car that you turn on in case of fog. And they are anal about getting this red fog light. And they failed my inspection twice, because they told me what I needed to do, and then they failed me on it. Then they changed what I needed to do, like how the switch worked. They failed me again. They finally passed me, and after they passed me, they said, we talked about it, and the car is so old, you don't even need a red fog light. And I just about lost it, but I've learned to really control myself in Spain. They did find that I had a completely non-functional right rear brake caliper, so I got to order one of those from Germany, which took a week, and then the fog light. Oh, also, some cars have like little driving lights on the outside of the front fender.
Like a side marker.
Yeah, side marker lights. I had to remove the bulbs and disconnect the wires, because in Spain, your car cannot have side marker lights. These are the things you learn. Now it's approved, so I had been doing all this work down in Alicante, where my Brit guy had his special engineer and his special ITV inspection station. Then I had to put it on a flatbed and drive it 700 kilometers back up to Barcelona, where it sits in my parking garage, because it's been 2.5 months and they still haven't given me my registration paper, which is a whole different government department. First they came back to the Brit and said, we don't know how to make a registration for a car that used to be gas but is now electric. And he told them which buttons to click. And then August happened, and nobody works in August in Europe because everybody goes on holidays. So I'm away now for 6 months, and I'm hoping that the paper will be done by the time I get home. I have no confidence in anything governmental in Spain. Okay, so that's my story. I did the initial conversion with the products and technologies at the time, had great Warp 9 motor and Curtis controller that I still love, and I didn't touch that, but I upgraded the batteries, more range, half the weight, and I'm happy with the package that it took 2 generations of technologies to get me to a nicely working car. Yeah.
Ballparkish, what was the first conversion and what was the second one?
Okay, the entire Electro Auto kit was like $12,000 plus batteries plus the body work. So I was probably at $20,000 to $25,000 on that first version of the conversion.
And this last one, did it go up a lot, or?
I'm sorry?
Is the last one likely to be a lot more, or have prices actually dropped?
You mean when I put the new batteries in here? I don't know.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what the future holds for Tesla Model S battery modules. But I was happy to pay their price. Because they let me work in the workshop for 6 months. And it's like, how big of a check do you want me to write? Okay, here you go. So let's reflect. What happened since that first Jack video, standing down at the captain's house in front of the Speedster? Well, Tesla came to, they not only invented the market, but they continued to dominate it. Everybody knows Tesla and Elon, love them or hate them. And we're pulling people into the EV world because everybody knows what a Tesla is. Everybody's heard the story. He invented the gigafactory concept, mass battery manufacturing. He's got 6 car models and an electric semi-truck. He's injection molding cars like a matchbox, like 9,000 tons of molten aluminum. Here's your car. And he's 90% along the way to full self-driving, which changes the entire nature of transportation. We're at a horse and buggy to car moment in human history. And he's building the largest AI compute farm on the planet. And on October 10th, my stock's going to go up a little bit because he's going to show off the cyber taxi, whatever that is. It's going to change the planet. And because of all of this, every other car company has been dragged kicking and screaming into the future. And they called the Tesla charging plug the North American charging standard before it was a standard, but they had the balls to say that. And now every other company has signed on to that with an adapter in the meantime, and they're all going to change their native plug. And I think Kia is the first one that has a native Max plug.
Was it Kia or Aptera? Aptera adopted it, but they haven't.
That's right, Aptera was first, but
Yeah,
Kia
but there's
was,
no
in the last
such-
month or so, Kia has shown
That's
their
because
car.
the CCS wouldn't fit.
Pretty tough getting Aptera yet.
Yeah. So where are we now? What is our position in the world? I think we're the hot rod guys. Of like back in the 50s, they went to the speed shop, they bought big tires and chrome and carburetors, and they spent Sunday afternoon playing with their car and customizing it to like their own needs and wants, and unleash their creativity. And I
We're
think
like the
that's
Hells
where we are.
Angels at the end of the 40s.
Yeah. So this is where we are now. And the EV market has matured, and you can buy an unbelievably great car for very, very good money, but some of us, we still want to kind of play around on our own. So I looked up some statistics. 94.3% of all new cars in Norway are EVs.
Wow.
Yeah, that was as of last month. 24% of all cars sold in California are EVs. And Tesla remains at about 50% market share in America right now. So you can buy an EV, but where's the fun? Okay. So the impact again, I don't think anything in the history of our species has had the kind of rocketing curve on the graph as the transition to EVs. And Jack was there. He's the smartest guy in the room, and he knew what was going to happen before anybody else did. And he dragged us all along. He would stand there in front of the camera and say, I'm buying $1 million worth of Tesla stock this afternoon, and you guys should too, because I'm going to make you all millionaires. So, classic liquored up and high voltage, and we're all here because this is what we like to do. And I think we should all be happy of everything we've done in the industry, even our little small piece. You drive down the road in your car and people see you, they ask questions, and then you have the whole EV discussion. Maybe you give them a test ride, and bam, we got them, right? So, when you're sitting in your rocking chair on the front porch, gather around all the grandchildren and tell them all the stories about what you did back in the day. Okay, so that's pretty much my presentation. now I want to give you a little demo. One of the things I did near the end of my time here was I thought, okay, they're going to fail me on my inspection because my gas gauge doesn't work. And so what I thought I would do is make a little circuit that drives the gas gauge based on the state of charge of the pack. Makes absolutely perfect sense. But I couldn't find anybody who did it. There was an Australian company, but they've been out of business for several years. So I designed a little circuit which read from Wi-Fi, it read the state of charge value from the EVTV V2 controller and used pulse width modulation to make a voltage that would drive the gauge, and it worked pretty well. So then I decided to, like this was a hand soldered prototype, right? And I thought, okay, I want to make a more production level version so it doesn't vibrate and catch on fire. So I went home and I made a circuit board and did the first version of the prototype. This is what my hand soldered prototype looks like, and the main device here is an ESP32 microcontroller. Who has a favorite microcontroller in the world? Who's got a favorite? What do you like?
Pick.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're back in the PIC days. But it's only got like 4 pins and does one thing, right? This one's got Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 16 analog input and output channels, pulse width modulation. It can do CAN bus, SPI, I2C. It can connect to the world. And it costs like $4.
Yeah.
So how can you go wrong? It's got a great development environment. It's easy to write code. So it worked well enough to pass. But then I thought, okay, I'm going to make this into a real circuit board, and maybe there's some other people in the world who want to have one. So I thought I'll make a small production run. The one tricky thing was, I don't know anything about high voltage. I'm a digital guy. I'm not an analog stick your finger in the battery pack kind of guy. So I found a project on the internet somewhere where a guy was reading high voltage DC and reading it into an ESP32. So I leveraged it. I stole it and put it into my circuit, and it just worked perfectly straight away. So this is the circuit board as it came out, ESP32 in the corner. This is the jack that you use to upload your code in here, and it also allows you to single step through your code and look at the state of your variables to make sure that everything is working properly. And then if there's something wrong, you can recognize it instantly, change the code, and push out a new version. This is where you run your 12 volts in. This is the fuel gauge pointer. This is the fuel gauge low fuel light. One CAN bus channel. In the next version, I'm going to put another CAN bus channel in here because I have room. And sometimes you've got multiple devices on the car that are running at different baud rates. If you've got a LEM current sensor, or you want to connect to a charger or a battery controller. Then this is where the high voltage in the pack comes in. It's completely physically and electrically isolated from the rest of the circuit. It goes through a step down here, through an opto isolator, through 2 op amps, and then it's a low level signal that I just read with the ESP32. And when I designed it, I bought all the parts from LCSC, which is the parts sister company to JLC PCB. They're like the powerhouse of circuit board manufacturing in China. And I could send them this, and they could make boards for me and just ship them to me. And I also built this in Fusion 360. Fusion 360 I was using for years as my 3D printing tool. I could model it and then print it on my 3D printers. But then they also had a product called Eagle, which is a schematic and circuit design. They now put Eagle inside Fusion 360, so that's pretty cool. Is anybody using Eagle or Fusion 360? Because I have questions. A few questions. I'll buy you a drink and we can talk about it. So I made one small wire layout mistake right here, which I fixed with a bodge wire. Then I just iterated through the code to add, reading this and putting this out on the pin and all of that. And then, because you need to put configuration values into it, like how big is my battery pack, what's my voltage, what's my minimum and maximum. Then you also need to calibrate it, because even your 12-volt battery circuit in your car goes up and down. So I can't just hard code in 12.0 and do all the math from that to drive the gauge. So I made a configuration screen which is running inside the ESP32, because you can build and run a web server inside that chip. And okay, so that's the end of the presentation. Let's actually look at this thing running. So this is it right here, the board, and this is the hardware debugging board, and the software goes through this wire. It is running right now, and there's a really cool library that you can just slurp into your development tool that lets you manage your Wi-Fi connection. When the board first comes up, you don't know how to connect it to your Wi-Fi. So when you power up the board, you look at all the devices that are on your network with the your router's web page. You go to that IP address and you're presented with this screen. You click Connect Wi-Fi or Configure Wi-Fi, and then it comes back and says, okay, what's the real Wi-Fi that you want my board to connect to? And it'll give you a list. Okay, now it says there's I love you a long time, and I put the password in, and I say save. And now when the board reboots, it will be on that network. And hopefully the user can then update their Wi-Fi SSID and password if you like. It displays the IP address that it's currently running on and the host name. This section is where you do your calibration. So what you do is you have a voltmeter on your 12 volt somewhere in the car. You type that number in and you hit calibrate. And the hardware will read the current value on the input pin and the voltage that you said it was, and that builds a calibration value which gets applied later. You do the same thing with the pack voltage. Voltmeter on the pack, you type the number in, you hit calibrate. That now I have the pack voltage versus the number that I'm reading in on the chip. Then for to define the range of the gauges and things, you put the low pack voltage and the high pack voltage. Then you say, where do you want to read the pack voltage from? Either on the wired connection or Wi-Fi from the V2. Then you say, what's the voltage I want to send to the gas needle to indicate the empty and the full values. And then you just click that. So you can go through this iteratively. You might put in, say, somewhere between 0 and 12, maybe 3 volts for the low. You click that, and then the needle will change. And if it's a little bit high, then you keep decreasing the number until you get it right where you want it. And the same is for the full, the percentage of your state of charge when you want the low fuel light to come on. Then as a programmer, and I forgot to say, I'm going to open source all this, the board design and the firmware. So anybody can grab the code, build it. And as a programmer, you always want to have your debug messages coming out somewhere so you can see things happening. You can either turn debug off, you can have it come out this USB-C port right here, or you can have it actually come through the air over Wi-Fi on this port. You can have a little putty window that will display your debugging messages with no wire at all. And then you can drive the gauges in a simulated mode, and you can watch the gauge go up and down, just to make sure everything's being exercised correctly. And that's pretty much it. Anybody got any more questions? Yes?
have you considered separating the board into two sections? You're already separating the high and the low voltage.
Yeah,
If I were to use that board, I would have to run a few 12-volt wires, other wires down into my battery pack, or I'd have to run high voltage out of the pack to the board.
Yeah.
But if it's in two pieces,
Yeah.
I can then just run the signal wires out, which is hugely beneficial if you don't want high voltage in your dash.
true. So what I did with mine is the board lives in the battery pack, and all I have to do is run 12 volts into it, and it's already.
Oh, and it's only 12 volts in, and then you're doing Wi-Fi out.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, even if you split the board in two, you're still gonna need either Wi-Fi
Communication
connection-
wire that comes out.
Yeah, or some kind of wire.
It's still low voltage though.
Right, yeah.
I was looking at where's the high voltage coming out of the pack. If I
Okay.
can fit it in the pack,
Yeah.
right, then I can just do 12 volts into the pack.
Yeah, that's the safest thing. And I already had 12 volts inside my pack because that's where the DC to DC, the battery controller and the charger, and I've got cooling fans, and that was already there. Okay?
Question,
Yep.
a broader question. 2 years ago, I discovered this magazine, EV Guide.
Oh, okay.
Just wondering, Legacy EV, broader question. Is this making any impact in the movement of building versions?
I have to confess, I've never seen that magazine before. I don't know anything about it.
I've been getting them out the last 2 years, and there's a whole stack over here.
Okay. Well, anything that helps get the word out, I think. I don't know if people would walk by the newsagent and see it sitting on the shelf, or maybe they advertise. I think anything helps. You know, what's that old phrase, like, all publicity is good publicity. Even if it's bad, it's still good for you. So yeah, that couldn't hurt. Okay, if anybody has any technical questions about the board or wants to talk, catch me afterward. My YouTube channel is Mike's Tropical Tech, and I've got a bajillion videos talking about the car and also the hardware and software development of this board.
Do you have any photos of what the car looks like now?
Oh,
I
gosh.
had one, it was on a car
I had one with the car cover over it, parked in my parking space underneath my apartment.
And the airplane's underneath your apartment too?
No. No.
It's on the roof.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to thank my Patreons and YouTube members, Peter Bouvier, Puppy, and Craig, for their ongoing support. I see that a whopping 96% of my viewers are not subscribers, so please go ahead and click that subscribe button because it really helps out the YouTube algorithm. Thanks and take care, and I'll see you in the next video.